Morning. Good morning, everyone. Today we will be doing T.S. Eliot's poem Preludes. Preludes is a poem by T.S. Eliot composed between 1910 and 1911. It is in turns literal and impressionistic, exploring the sordid and solitary existences of the spiritually moiled as they play out against the backdrop of drab modern city. Preludes by T.S. Eliot is a six stanza poem that is divided up into four distinct sections. There is not one specific rhyme scheme that lasts throughout the entire text. Instead, the stanzas and preludes have different patterns. The meter is also scattered throughout the majority of the poem. Eliot utilizes iambic tetrameter, though. This means that a number of the lines contained four sets of two beats or syllables. The first of these is unstressed and the second is stressed. It is likely that Eliot considered the subject matter of preludes when crafting the not quite consistent pattern of rhyme and rhythm. Considering that the text focuses on modern life, it makes sense that no one pattern could contain all parts. There are a number of images that turn up multiple times within preludes. One of the most striking is newspaper. It appears in the first, third, and fourth stanzas and is used for a variety of different tasks. The pieces, which are circulated throughout the city and move from hand to hand, symbolize the slow degradation of the city as well as its resilience. The newspaper is connected to the soul of the city itself. They are everywhere, touching every life. A reader should also consider the role of the soul in preludes. Although it is not until section 3 that the soul explicitly makes its way into the narrative, it is present throughout. It comes to symbolize the parts of life that generally go unnoticed. Due to the fact that it is not on the surface, it is ignored by the majority of people. It is important to note before beginning this piece that the word prelude refers to a musical interval. Its song-like qualities are played out through the range of rhymes and rhythms used. Let's begin the poem by reading the first stanza of the poem. The winter evening settles down with streets and passageways. 6 o'clock, the burnt out ends of smoky days, and now a gusty shower wraps the grimy scrape of withered leaves about your feet and newspapers from vacant lots. The showers beat on broken blinds and chimney pots, and at the corner of the street, a lonely cab horse steams and stamps, and then the lighting of the lamps. In the first lines of Preludes, the speaker begins by setting the scene. It is a winter evening and the day is coming to a close. The speaker describes it as though it is a person. He personifies it, allowing a reader to better understand the place. The next feature he wants the reader to know about the city is that it smells like steak. This smell is in the passageways, wafting from the restaurants and homes. The scene is less calm than it originally seemed in the first lines, as the speaker depicts the day as burnt out. It is exhausted and finally settling down. There is a rainstorm happening as well. It moves from the grimy scraps left behind by the long day about your feet. At this point, it becomes clear that Eliot is going to utilize second person. This makes perfect sense for this piece as it forces the reader into the narrative alongside the speaker. In the next line, there is the first reference to newspapers. They are moving from their previous resting place in the vacant lots. Let me read the next few lines of the section 2, the morning comes to consciousness of faint stale smells of beer from the sawdust trampled street with all its muddy feet that press to early coffee stands with the other masquerades that time resumes. One thinks of all the hands that are raising dingy shades in 1,000 furnished rooms. Now, it is really raining. It is beating down onto the apartments and rattling on broken blinds and chimney pots. The speaker makes clear that the city is not in good shape. It seems to be falling apart. In the last lines of this section, the speaker calls the reader's attention. In the corner of the street, a lonely cab horse steams and stamps, and then the lighting of the lamps. The city scene is becoming increasingly dramatic. There is a horse in the distance, stamping its feet on the ground and blowing hot air out of its nose. The last line is separate from the rest of the stanza. He describes the lighting of the lamps. This is a reference to the onset of night and how everyone lights the lamps inside their homes. The line emphasizes the fact that the people in the city have long since escaped from its streets. They are now safely inside. Moving on to the next part of the poem. You tossed a blanket from the bed. You lay upon your back and waited. You dazed and watched night revealing the 1,000 sordid images of which your soul was constituted. They flickered against the ceiling, and when all the world came back, and the light crept up between the shutters, and you heard the sparrows in the gutters, you had such a vision of the street as the street hardly understands, sitting along the bed's edge, where you curled the papers from your hair or clasped the yellow soles of your feet in the palms of both soiled hands. In this section of preludes is also a single stanza. Here, the speaker skips the rest of the night and morning has dawned once more. This is another example of Eliot's use of personification. The city comes back to consciousness just like a human being waking up. The first smell the speaker takes note of this time is that of stale beer. This is a leftover from whatever happened at night between the two stanzas. There are also footprints in the mud. These led up to early coffee stands. The importance of this line connects to the next, in which the speaker emphasizes the unchanging pattern of life. The inhabitants of the city need to coffee to resume their masquerades with time. The speaker wants to make sure the reader thinks of all hands that are raising the dingy shades in 1,000 furnished rooms. The morning is not necessarily a fresh start to life. These people are grudgingly entering back into the same pattern of tasks. The relevance of the reference to masquerade balls comes from the fact that time never seems to progress. There are no changes to the landscape of movement. Moving on to the next part. His soul stretched tight across the skies that fade behind a city block or trampled by insistent feet at 4 and 5 and 6 o'clock, and short square fingers stuffing pipes and evening newspapers and eyes assured of certain certainties, the conscience of a blackened street, impatient to assume the world. Here the speaker returns to the listener, the person or people he referred to as you in the first stanza. He uses this person to depict a general course of action taken by an average resident of the city. It begins with the return to night. This person throws off their blanket but does not get out of bed. They lay there and stare at the ceiling, waiting and dozing and meditating on all the sordid or distasteful images of the night. Finally, the world in the morning light creeps back in again. It gets rid of the terrible images that came straight from your soul. It is at right that these undefined, morally corrupting thoughts take place. The speaker describes how your soul is constituted or made up of terrible images. You hear the sparrows moving not in trees but in the gutters of the buildings. The speaker states that you imagine the street in a way that the street itself could not understand. It is not entirely clear what Eliot means in these lines, but perhaps he was thinking about how one's own image of the world makes the world what it is. One's emotions influence how the world seems at any given point of time. Moving on to the next lines. I am moved by fancies that are curled around these images and cling the notion of some infinitely gentle, infinitely suffering thing. Wipe your hand across your mouth and laugh. The worlds revolve like ancient women gathering fuel in the vacant lots. Finally, the you in the narrative sits up in the bed. In this position, you take newspapers and use them to curl your hair. It appears that you in this piece is a woman. The speaker continues on to mention how you clasp the yellow soles of feet in the palms of both soiled hands. There is a great deal of dirty grime left over from the day before. This emphasizes the fact that the new day does not wipe away the old. There is grime on the man's main subject's hands and feet, even though the day is just beginning. In this fourth section of preludes, this is the longest of the fourth and begins with the ninth line stanza. The stanza includes another mention of the soul. This is one of the most important images of the piece. For more, see the introductory section, Symbols and Images. The soul belongs to a man. It is the sky, and it is in the city itself one can find it. Here, in this last fifth stanza, now the speaker describes how he is moved by fancies that are curled around these images and cling. His involvement in this narrative allows one to take more hopeful approach to what is being described. When he looks out on the grimy, smelly city streets, he is able to hold on to the notion of some infinitely gentle thing that moves around. This could be a general feeling of grace, goodness, or the physical impact of what listening to one's soul could do. In these final three lines of preludes, the speaker returns to the second person and asks the reader to wipe their hand across their mouth and laugh. This is a return to the previous image of time going nowhere. He describes the world as revolving endlessly and as history repeating itself. The ancient women come again and again to gather fuel in the vacant lots. The speaker wants the reader to look on the world and see it for what it is, but not despair. One needs to embrace their own soul, see hope in the future, and laugh when they can. It is not clear whether or not the speaker sees the world as changing and becoming any less grimy anytime soon. I hope this analysis or explanation has been clear. Thank you.